Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is Lee Fuller with DevTeam Plus, and I'm here to help you out with some Tricaster advanced tips and tricks that I've learned over time. I've been a long time Tricaster user and have seen it grow by leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. And now we have some really cool additions that I'm going to actually be showing you here that you may or may not be aware of in the TC2 environment. So that being said, I want to, for those of you that are new to my channel, please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell to be notified of any new videos that come out. And please do share the video and comment on my channel. That helps the channel grow immensely. I know it's rather new at the moment, but I've got a lot of content that I'll be adding very soon. Let's kind of get started here. And I'm going to apologize for being long-winded. There's a lot to cover in this video. So I will be adding chapter markers so you can jump ahead, or if you want to come back and see something, you don't have to scrub all the way through. I'm going to break this into some sections for you that will be helpful along the way. So let's start by saying that what we're doing today is learning about advanced recording techniques. Now, I know most of you have recorded a million times with your Tricaster, but what you may not be aware of is that there are some pretty advanced and reasonably well created ways for you to be able to record many more things than you would normally record. And why is that helpful? Well, for those of us that do virtual shows, and of course in today's day and age with COVID and the fact that virtual events are huge, some of my clients are huge clients that have typically multi-million-dollar national meetings, and they all get together in one place and do those meetings. Well, now, of course, they're not doing that. So we're bringing all of these people in from all these various places, and we're having to bring them into one place to do a broadcast. Now, the challenge here is in the standard recording setup. So now I'm going to go into, and you're looking at my TC2 Elite interface right now, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you the basic recording. So this section is going to be all about basic recording. So if you already know all of this, then you might want to just skip ahead to one of the other sections that cover something that maybe you didn't already know. So for those of you that don't know already, here's where you go to record. You come up to this little gear icon on the top right side. Now you have to be careful here, and I've done this, so I can tell you from experience. Be careful that if you want to make a change to something, and especially if you're in the middle of a broadcast, and I kind of don't suggest you do that anyway, but be careful even just clicking to look at your configuration for your records, because if you accidentally click away from that gear icon and you're recording, you've just stopped your recordings. So, and there's no kind of warning, which is something that I hope Newtek will add to the interface at some point, where they will ask you before you're going to stop your records, unless it's triggered by something that's different. But if you click on it, I think it should ask you first. But that's just me complaining. Anyway, so when you click on this gear icon and you click on configure, you've got these different mixes. You've got 8 different mixes that you can record. So what that tends to make you believe is that you have 8 different individual items that you can record at a time, and that's it. Well, it's not it, and I'll show you why. So when you go to the output configurations, and let me go back here. This is mix number 1, mix number 2, mix 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are all configured on this output screen. So what are those mixes? Well, here I've got, and I almost always do this, and there's several reasons why you may want to do this. You want to put your mix 1 on your program out, and the program out with everything in it, all your downstream keyers and everything. And your master audio, obviously, and your session being, set to the session settings that you've got here. And I'm right now at 1080p with 30 frames a second, or 2997. So the next thing I typically do is I do a program clean. And why do I do a program clean? Well, because if we want to shoot this over to the editors and maybe they didn't like the client didn't like a particular piece of graphic or artwork that was there, the post team can edit that out and change it. They don't have those things. So those downstream keys are just not included in the program clean. Now, then you move on to your other inputs. And let me switch over to my input screen right here. And you'll see my input number 1 is Bob Smith. Number 2 is John Doe. And I left the rest of them just numbered. But there's a reason why I do these named, but that's something else that we'll cover in a different time. So all of these different mixes you can set to all of these different inputs. Well, that would, again, lead you to believe that you basically have 6 now, because you just burned 2 of them with the program and program clean. You've only got 6 inputs that you can isolate or create ISOs from. Well, that's not true. There's actually one more that you can do here in this particular setting that I'm going to show you right now. So we'll kind of deviate a little bit from the regular programs or the regular recordings. Actually, no, I won't. I'm gonna stick with that so that you can go to the chapter sections that you want. So anyway, now that you've got those set to what they needed to be on this output, you've got them set to the various inputs that you want to go here to your record settings, and you'll notice that I have, and this is a good thing to do, I have 2 different drives. I have the D drive that's built into the TriCaster, and I have an SNS drive or a network drive that's actually separate from the TriCaster and connected to it. Now, those 2 drives, and I've tested them here, and I'm going to show you that in just a second, but those 2 drives are separate for a reason. And what I do, and you'll see this when I go from mix 1, you'll see mix 2 is on the V drive, same session, but on the V drive, and mix number 1 is on the D drive. And what it does is it alternates. So it goes D, V, D, V, D, V, D, all the way down. So the reason you want to do that is twofold. Number 1, if you're recording mix number 1 as a program out and with everything, and then you've got mix number 2, which is a program clean with all your normal audio and everything else, then you've got 2 good program records. Now, you may have to go back in and throw in lower thirds, but heaven forbid, knock on wood, you lose your D drive in the middle of this recording or something gets corrupted there, and you've lost all those recordings. So now you've got 2 good program out records. Now, let me show you another one, another thing that's important with this. You want to test your drives before your session starts. And by this little icon here, looks like a little speedometer, you can click on, and I'm not going to test the V drive because it'll take forever because it's huge, but you can test the drives, and I'm going to test D, or I did test D, and I actually just tested it just before this. And it shows that I can reliably stream 44 records to this drive at one time. And for this session, this session size, I should say, or this session setting, and I know it says 4K 60p here and 1080p 60 here, but in reality, look at it as though this amount of time is the amount of time that you have available to record using these session settings that you're in right now. Just get in the habit of thinking that way. I know this says 31 hours and this says 16 hours, but trust me, you're better off just assuming that the lower number is the right number. But we can see that we have 44 streams. So if we can record 44 streams, then why is it that we're limited to only 8 when you're looking at the configuration? Well, we're not. So that's the end of the standard recording information. So now we're going to go on to the next bit of more advanced recording information. Now, I told you, when you look here at the output, you see, and this is a very new edition of the TriCaster software. Most of you might see only 2 streams here, but now they have 3, which is great. And in this day and age, it's useful. So what it gives me, though, and I don't have to burn one of my typically I run 2 streams at a time. I don't have to burn one of those to do this now. I've got this 3rd stream. I can actually set this to mix number 1, which is my program out, and it's got all of my DSK and everything else on it, which is great. And then what I do is I come over to this stream and encode setting guide here, and I can set my stream number 3 to a file capture. Now, here's the really cool part about this. For those of you that typically have to grab your recording and run to the editor with a recording, and the unfortunate part about having to run to the editor is that when you record on the TriCaster, it records in an MOV format that is proprietary to TriCaster. So you can't just hand them those recordings. Those recordings are in a proprietary format that you have to export. And you have to go up here to do that. So you go up there and you add all of your files that you want to export. You tell it where you want to export it to, what settings you want, and then you export it. And it can take hours and hours and hours to do that. So now what you can do here is actually set a file capture, and you can then in the configuration, you set it to be to use the session clips folder so that it's recording in the same place as all the others. But the nice thing about this is an MP4 format. So you don't have to worry about exporting. You now have a brand new MP4 ready to go of your program out. Now, here's the catch. In order to record that other stream out recording, and you notice you've got 3 streams. So if you're not streaming, you could use, 3, you could create 3 of them. In order to have this record as well, you have to click this stream encode as well as your record and replay. You can't just click the record and have that stream get recorded. You have to click both. So this stream has to be running in order for you to get that MP4 output. But how beautiful is that? Now you've got an MP4 output that is ready to go. You can copy it onto another drive, shoot it over to your editor, upload it to wherever that needs to go for them, whatever you need to do, and they've got an MP4 that they can actually utilize at this session setting. So in this case, again, I'm running 1080p at 2997. So it's going to go to them at 1080p, 2997, ready to go. How beautiful is that? Now, again, you could, like I said, you can come in here and you could set up and you can create a new preset. And if you go to a new preset and set file capture, you can call it something different and set it in a different way and even set it to record somewhere differently. And it will appear here and you can hit it on number 1 or number 2. Like you could see I have one here. So, and I'm going to uncheck these so I don't do anything stupid. So, well, actually I do want to leave this one. So that's one more record that you can have, but even more beautifully at an MP4 format, which is great. So now let's talk about the advanced recordings, or let's call this recordings and more. Now, like I mentioned, when you go, I'm going to go back over to my input screen here. Like I mentioned, there are many times, and I've done it just recently. As a matter of fact, just a week or so ago, I did an event where we had 18 callers coming in, 18 presenters in this event. And we had to set them all up ahead of time because you can't stop and start the records in the middle of a broadcast. This was a live broadcast, but we were switching off, 9 and 9. So we had a total of 18. Well, if I go by this setting here, and by the way, I'm going to stop here and say, the reason I'm showing this is I'm showing that this is my session, one of my session directories that I'm going to be recording to in just a second. And you can see it's blank, it's empty. So I didn't want to start with anything in there. So again, if we say that we're limited to these 8 plus that 1, that's only 9. Well, and then I can't isolate 2 of them because I'm burning 2 of these records here. So that's a problem. So we need a way to be able to bring in all these other people that are going to be coming in, whether it's NDI or, obviously it's going to be NDI if it's more than 8, because you only have 8 SDI inputs. So then you're going to have NDI inputs coming in from all of these others. So the question becomes, what do you do? Now, typically I've seen people just kind of pick the most important people to isolate, and the rest of them, we hope we got what we needed on our program out and we're fine. Well, you don't need to do that anymore. So in each one of these inputs, there's this little icon, gear icon, and you've got your source. So you can set your source and you can come up in here. You can change your pan, all this stuff for PTZ. You can change your input colors and your proc amps and keying or cropping or whatever you need to do, and even set your automation, right? So, but let's just look at this one. We've got this thing called capture. And voila, look at this. I can now record Bob Smith, and I've got it set to my sessions folder for this particular session. And again, there's that little icon that you can use to test just to be sure. And I'm telling you, please test before you do any broadcast. Test. Just do. It doesn't take that long. Test it. And you'll see it actually records the audio from this channel. It does not record the audio from the master. Now, remember that because I'm going to come back to that in a second. So remember, this records just the audio from this input. That's it. Now, the other caveat of doing this type of capture is that it records at the current resolution that is coming into this channel, regardless of what your session settings are. So if you're set at 1080p at 2997 and this is coming in at 720p at 30 frames a second, it's going to record 720p at 30 frames a second in this recording. Okay, in just this recording. Now, the other interesting part of this is a lot of times, and we all know this, that, you know, if you're bringing somebody in off of Zoom or Teams or whatever, their resolution may not be all that hot. But also what may happen is that they may lose resolution in the middle of the broadcast. And we've all seen this happen where all of a sudden their resolution gets weird because their internet just went bye-bye. So what happens is the TriCaster recognizes that and it stops the record and starts immediately a new record with that new resolution. So at least you're not going to lose the recording. You're going to have the entire recording. You're not going to lose anything. But what you're going to see is now two files. And one is going to be at the original resolution. The other is going to be at the newer resolution. And if it goes back up again, it'll start another file at that newer resolution. Now, I know that kind of sounds wonky, but the reality is at least you got it. And if this is the president or CEO of the client company that you're working for a broadcast, and you saved it, and now you just got to go fix it in post, you've just made a friend. So you're going to want to make sure that you cover yourself in that way. But the beauty of this is now you can now capture, and I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to go over here to John Doe, and I'm going to set this to record as well. So, and this, you'll notice this also it alternates D, V, DV. In my case, V is that network drive. So that's a good thing to do. You want to stagger your recordings if you can, if at all possible. So I'm going to capture this one as well. And this should name this John Doe. Oop, I probably shouldn't have changed that. I think I'll leave that. Let me see if I didn't just kill it. No, I didn't. There we go. We're good. So I'm going to leave this as is, and I'm just going to record those two, but I'm also going to record my mixes out, and you'll see, again, we've got nothing in this folder. I'm also going to record my mixes out, and I'm going to record that stream. So let me see to make sure I've got my thing. Okay, so I've got mix 1, which is program out regular, mix 2, program out clean, and then I've got nothing else here. I'm not gonna bother with these at the moment. So let's close this, and I'm going to hit record. So now we're recording, and I'm going to hit stream. So now I'm recording those two ISOs. Now there's not much really going on right now, so let's just kind of auto something so there's something to see in the records, and I'll switch to a different video. There we go. So now we've got at least this information is recorded now, and I'm going to stop these. Okay. So now remember, I promised you that I was going to come back to the audio issue with the isolated records that we are capturing off of each individual channel. Here's what's important about that. In this audio mixer, you'll see, and typically we bring in Zoom audio, for example, off of one machine. We don't have all the machines running audio because we get, differences in timing and what have you from each one of the machines. And so we want to make sure that we've got one good, clean piece of audio. So typically I would do that on, for example, this input here. So I'd say input 5 is the machine that's bringing in the audio from Zoom. However, I can still set these so that they are collecting audio, but I'm muting them here in the audio mixer. The beauty of that is they're still being recorded. So even though they're muted and they're not going out onto the master, they're still being recorded on those ISOs. And that's the beauty of it. So now if you want to record them, you can record them because, as I pointed out, when you go back over to these inputs, when you set these records here, you can only record the audio from the incoming audio stream of that channel. You cannot reset this to program. So that's kind of your extra to be able to give you all of these different ISOs on top of the mixes that you have normally. Okay, so coming back over to our folder now where the recordings are, we've got this clips capture folder for this session, and there we've got Bob Smith, who I believe is on 1, and this is on the D drive, and mix number 1 that we had set for this as well, for this drive as well. So we got mix number 1 here, and then when we go back over to the V drive and we take a look at the clips folder, we'll see under capture we've got number 2 input, which is John Doe. This is the ISO that I recorded with him there, and mix number 2. So I've got all 4 of my recordings. So then you say, well, where's number 5? Where's that MP4 file that you promised me? Well, under encodings, there it is. So there's my MP4 file, and I had it named Award Show just because I had done that before. And so here's an MP4 file that you can now use. It's the program out with the program audio that you can now use to throw onto a drive and hand it to your editor, and away you go. But you can then go back and you can export all of the other recordings that you have set up. So I know this has been kind of long, but this is a really good example of getting to know your TriCaster really well. It's important that you kind of do some digging. Some of this is new, some of it's not. But what's important to know is you've got a lot more flexibility than you really thought you had. Because I know for a long time, I thought I had 8 output records and that was it. I was done. So just a matter of learning these new little tips and tricks, and that's what I'm here for. So again, guys, thank you so much. Sorry for being long-winded. I will be putting chapter markers in this recording so that you'll be able to see these things and you can jump to them as you need to. Appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and smash that bell button so you get notified. And please comment, share the videos if you like them. I really hope it helps other people out because I know it helps me when I learn these new things. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Talk to you again in the next one. Take care. Peace.